Justice Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi will oversee the handover and reburial ceremony of the exhumed remains of political activists who were hanged on death row in the 1880s. The apartheid government withheld Benjamin Moloisi and Abraham Gomezulu's remains, denying their families the opportunity to mourn and bury their loved ones. Our reporter Skara Mafokwane joins us now live. Skara, very good morning to you. Must be quite an emotional morning for these families, but also some peace at eventually having to lay their loved ones to rest.
In September, we'll have the families in Eastern Cape.
So we have less than 10 that are left. And just before we go into that, the minister has joined us and is briefing the media. Let us take you straight into this briefing which the minister is addressing right now.
Ensuring that we can find closure, the families can find closure, but give dignity to the fallen soldiers of our liberation movements. Because if you know, the apartheid was very clear in terms of when they were executing them and burying them. They wanted to make sure that they are forgotten in the history. So their graves were not marked. They were not given proper funerals by their families. And families didn't know where they were buried. I mean, some were buried in your Mamelodi cemeteries, Atteridgeville, as they were being hanged in Pretoria. So that's why it's important for us to have this process and assist the families with closure. So we hand over the bodies as government to both the ANC and the families, because the two comrades were members of the African National Congress. And that's why you'll find the members who were part of those platoons, the members and the leadership of the ANC, the Secretary General will be here. Because from government, we are saying to them, this is where we've gone and this is why we are giving you back, the comrades back to you, because they were part of the state properties by apartheid. And therefore, as the minister, I have that duty to hand them back to their families.
And of course, it comes at an important time where the newly announced commission of inquiry into the unprosecuted TRC cases was announced by the president.
Definitely, it comes important. You'd note that the president has announced that commission of inquiry, particularly to look at whether state organs or anyone within the state actually stopped prosecution of TRC cases. I can report that there are quite a number of cases that are before court. And as I deliver my speech, I'll give report back in terms of the actual numbers, how many people we've been able to actually have turning of successful prosecution and conviction, because there are those cases that prosecution has happened and it has starting from 2021, and there are several cases that are before the courts. You know the inquests that are going on, your Timol cases, we've got the Galata 4 case coming in June this year. We've got the Griffith Mklake and the president of the ANC, former president of the NC inquests that are going on. This is also part of us ensuring that we implement to the fullest the recommendation of the TRC. It's not only that, we've got about 18 community projects. We're working with communities as part of the legacy project. We're providing support for children of those families that are on the TRC report, but more importantly as well, the ones of reparation amounts were given. So it's work that we are doing, and what we have committed and the president has asked me to do is to ensure that we wrap up this work so that we don't have elongative process that doesn't come to an end and families still asking questions. But it's very important for us to be able to do this work.
Minister Mmamoloko Jones from ENCA. Earlier this year, some families brought an application against the president and government, accusing departments of, suppressing investigations to cases referred to the MPA TRC cases. Apart from the alleged allegations of political interference, what have been other mishaps and hiccups in delaying and ensuring successful prosecution of these cases?
Look, we are dealing with that case in court. As I say, one of the outcomes or the mediation of that court case has been the issue of the establishment of the commission of inquiry. The challenge sometimes with the prosecution, to have successful prosecution of these cases, is one, remember you go into court, you've got to reconstruct the crime scene. You've got to have people who are leading evidence and giving witness of what would have happened for you to have a successful prosecution. So in certain instances, it becomes difficult to reconstruct, to find evidence, but NPA continues to work in this area, and that's why I'm saying there are several cases that we have already started and others we are going to continue having conversations with the families as well, because you don't want to do something like this without the families giving you permission to proceed and say this is what we want.
Last part. Skara Mafokwane from Newzroom Afrika, Minister. I just want to find out, between 1960 and 1990, according to your statement, there are 130 more cases like this. Have you identified where these individual activists were buried, and have you been in contact with the families?
Yes, definitely. As I say, we actually this year, I'm anticipating that we'll conclude that work. With the remaining, I've committed that the remaining families or the remaining comrades are the ones that we'll conclude with this year. As I say, we've got the 2 today, we've got Eastern Cape, we've got Limpopo. And once we do with those, we'll have been done with 130 overall, completely finishing them in terms of being able to identify. These are the ones, remember, you've got to separate them. They're the ones at the gallows, particularly. So you still have those that are buried outside South Africa, that the process is different to bring them back into South Africa. You'd have seen earlier last year where the president officiated over the process when they were received and handed over to their families. And as I said, Tumanokwe being one of them. So it's part of the process that we are embarking on. But in terms of those that were killed at the gallows, we are concluding the work in this financial year.
Sorry, Minister, do we know the names of who will be leading the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into these TRC cases?
Not yet. The president will announce the name once he has consulted with the Chief Justice. Because as you know, the requirement is that he has to do it with Chief Justice. So it's within that. But it should be done quite soon. The announcement, the terms of reference have been agreed to, because that's the most important thing. Once the terms of reference have been announced and also the judicial team has been appointed, I will, as the minister and together with the team in the presidency and Minister Mkunu, sit together with them so that we can map out the way forward and we do the contractual processes to ensure that this starts as soon as possible. But from justice point of view, we are ready. And that's why the terms of reference have already been agreed to by ourselves, with the president, signed off by the president, and we have been able to negotiate this with the families.
And how are the 2 families now today?
Look, I've even met them now because they only received their bodies from the mortuary this morning. So they had to do their own traditional ceremonies and rituals. So we always allow the families to do that part without hindrance from us. We meet them here and will interact with them as part of the process.
Thank you very much. Of course,
That was Mmamoloko Kubayi. She is rather the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Katlego. I'm just going to ask my colleague Ritu to just pan towards that. I'm not sure if we can see it. I'm sorry, we can't pan to my left-hand side, his right, because there are people obscuring that view. But the remains of one of those activists has arrived, Katlego. We are just waiting for the Mgomezulu family to arrive. We know that the 2 remain separated at the mortuary to, like the minister said, to perform those cultural rituals at home and say a short prayer before making their way to this community hall where this ceremony led by the minister will be led. But I can see that there has been some movement. We'll ask then that my colleague pan a bit to the right. You can see down to the right of the camera the hearse which is parked, and a guard of honor which has been done by the members of the Umkhonto Wesizwe military veterans along this patch of road. So there, what you see there, that's the remains of the coffin rather, of the remains of Benjamin Moloisi, who was an activist with the ANC, convicted in 1983 and executed in 1985. So like we said, the ceremony will take place shortly. It was meant to rather start shortly after 9 o'clock, but it's just been delayed by the family from the Mgomezulu family. We are told that they are en route and will be here shortly for the beginning of that ceremony. Katlego.